presenter says to us, you're trainers. Is this a good learning space? We're like, this isn't set up right. He says, do you think you could do better? And we said, yeah, we probably could. He said, good. You have 2 minutes to reset the room. So right now, you have 2 minutes to reset this room to make it the way you think it should be so we can have a great learning experience today. Go.
Okay. He's serious.
That's serious.
He's serious.
Okay, let's kind of go slanted in so we can all kind of face each other.
You guys do listen to the manager.
We want to do a circle or just like yeah, I think we want to have like a row across. We might want to face each other.
I guess I don't want anyone to come to me.
Okay, you're down to about 60 seconds. No pressure here.
We could also have tables, I guess? Yeah, that's a lot of effort.
Remember, everything's up for grabs. You can move stuff around, move tables if you want to do that. Just make sure that this is the space you need to learn effectively.
How about this table? Should they move this table?
If you want, Patrick, we'll take your microphone.
Yeah, let's scoot these back. Can we scoot the donuts back, everyone?
Yeah, can you help me with that one?
About another 30 seconds.
And then we'll add a row here, and then people can sit for I recommend going and sitting up there.
All right, how are we feeling? Does that feel like a better learning space for you?
It does.
Question number one for you. Have you ever seen anything like that in a learning exercise before in any classroom? How does that make you feel? What are the words that come to mind for that? Confused. I didn't get the punchline right now. What else did you feel when you got into that?
A bit pressured.
Yeah, that hits the work world. Anybody not feeling pressure in the work world? Or it's just taking a false right there. What else? Other people. What words come to mind to describe what you just went through?
Unconventional.
Okay, that's a good thing. Is the work world conventional? Did you know 40 years ago where you were going to be?
Good point.
Yeah. Anything else?
I felt very, very spontaneous. For us, I mean not for you, but for us.
We never know how this is going to play out. Someday this exercise will bomb. Today, fortunately, it was not the day it was going to bomb. Yeah, spontaneous. And again, journalism and everything else, other careers you look at, spontaneity is one of the keys to actually having opportunities. You have a job description, somebody comes along and says, will you do this? The person says, I'm sorry, it's not my job description. We call those civil servants and we feel sorry for them. The person says, wow, opportunity, am I going to get paid? No, okay, I'll do it anyway. That's the person who's going to rise. I'm sure you're going to hear stories like that from people up here, and you've probably seen it in the
I'm going to be
calls.
pushing back a lot on that, Paul.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Civil servants, my heroes.
I speak ill of them in jest. I was a
Okay.
civil servant for a good 15 years.
Okay.
So absolutely.
Okay,
But in
beautiful.
jest, we have that stereotype of people, what I'm getting at here, and to agree with your civil servants is great. They are like the unspoken heroes of the world. But when we are civil servants, we are rule bound, and if you try to do anything, you learn the way to survive is to do it and then apologize later. Not a great approach to life, but it really makes it work a lot.
Okay, second thing to push
Please.
back on,
Yeah.
get paid for your work. Don't work for free.
Second. Yeah.
Can I get an amen?
And act your wage. Don't do more work than they're paying you for. Going above and beyond is good in certain contexts, but as someone who came up in the part-time industry, you don't want to start doing above and beyond because they will keep you be there as long as they can if you do. So, and I think that's something that maybe people, generations before me, would disagree with, but it served me really well to not go above and beyond these roles where I was not compensated accordingly.
Is the panel and you unanimous agreement on that one, that you don't want to do things above and beyond?
Well, I think the reality is that the world has changed. And I stay around do another story for 11 o'clock and not get paid for it. But that was the mindset of the time, and I think fortunately that is changing.
That is good news. Good news. I still maintain, I don't want to leave you with the impression of saying go out and work yourself to death without getting good compensation. But the point I'm trying to make based on the experiences Patrick and I have had in our own careers is when we had opportunities to go a little bit beyond, not working day after day free of charge, but to do an assignment that was out of our job scope, or to take on some kind of a volunteer thing where there was not immediate payment in money, but the opportunities of meeting people and moving through career changes because of people we knew. For the two of us, I think that was really important. To this day, as a consultant and a writer, I don't have a single employer. I work with a variety of clients. What really makes it work for me is I plan out my work week to have somewhere around 10% of my hours be volunteer work. That's very meaningful, and I want to make sure I get like 5 or 10 things out of that. A great mentor of mine taught me early on, fire on all cylinders. You go do volunteer work, don't just do the gig. Do that and tie it back to all the other work you're doing. So with that in mind, it's not like you're lacking anything. But I also want to emphasize that for some of us, that's work, and I plant that thought to you that if you're flexible and spontaneous about it, it's a useful thing. Last round, any other words that came to mind for you in terms of the exercise we did? How did you feel when you saw that? I'm really fishing here. I'm looking for the positive side that comes out of that. I haven't heard that yet.
How about non sequitur?
Non sequitur, okay, that's good. What I hope you felt, and this is what I look for when I facilitate sessions like this, but I hope you felt like, wow, we're not just going to be sponges. This is not your typical classroom. It's a learning space where you're co-conspirators in the learning process. You're bringing as much to this as we're going to bring to you, and we're going to learn from you and be better at what we do because you're going to show us some of what you do. But I hope that you're feeling, for lack of a better word, a bit empowered. That's what you want to get, a learning space, which is our lifelong learning. That's why I bring it all back on. To me, it circles back to, if you're going to follow a journalism career, you're going to be a lifelong learner. And many of the other things that I hear from people, the kind of things you're looking at, those of you that want to be attorneys, those of you that are looking at neuroscience, lifelong learning is so essential. If you're not wanting to keep learning, if you think that at the end of your 4, 6, or 10, or 20 years at UCLA, that you're working on, that now you've learned it all and you can go home, none of us, I think, expect that. None of us think that that's going to be successful. But you got to get used to it. So if there's anybody in the room that hates school right now, condolences. All right, let's move on. Any questions up front or any reactions to this? Ken, hey, how are you? Why don't you move up closer to the front of the room?
All right.
What the Bruin offers, at least from our perspective, it's a real gift. It's a lifelong gift. And we're still taking the bow off it. I told the panelists up front I wanted to start this off to give us a sense of reality. So I'm just going to go from this guy across to that guy, one at a time, and I've asked them to be brief. You know, as journalists, you want to get the first couple lines out. Your lead has to be it, otherwise you've lost the audience. They're under guidance for me to try to do no more than 4 to 6 sentences at a time so that everybody gets a chance to talk in one interaction. So the question, starting with Patrick here, is think of something you got from the Bruin and how that helped you in your career.
All right, I'm going to try to squeeze 2 examples into 6 sentences. Number 1, end of my sophomore year, I was floundering, I was unhappy, I didn't know where my life was going. I wandered into the Daily Bruin. I found a society I fit into, and I found what I wanted to do with my life. It was, a Saul on the road to wherever he was going, Damascus moment. That was an epiphany for me. Number 2, after I started the Daily Bruin, I learned the value of meeting deadlines. And that's another great thing to know in life.
Thank you. Morning.
I will say I learned the value of not being arrogant.
which I think I'm still learning because I have a vivid recollection of walking up to the Daily Bruin door in this building and saying I would like to work at the Daily Bruin. And they said, great, you have to take a 6-week orientation. And I said to myself, well, I don't need a 6-week orientation because I've worked at my high school newspaper and therefore I know everything I need to know about journalism. And that turned out to not exactly be true. There was a lot more I had to learn about being a journalist.
For me, it was definitely positive community engagement, meaning the community I experienced in the newsroom, but also just getting out there in the world, going onto campus, learning about what stories, what people were doing. That was a very exciting part. As someone who's done internships, I was part of CEC, Daily Bruin, so many clubs. I do think that Daily Bruin was one of the healthiest places, and at times not healthy because I didn't know how to deal with all the work, but one of the healthiest ways I knew how to just foster positive community engagement. And then I think secondly, just the formal training, whether that's learning how to tell a powerful story or where to put a freaking serial comma. It drives me nuts even now, like on social media. And learning how to collaborate with others. So I think those are the two things that I bring with me in my everyday experience, whether that's in my career or just in my own community.
I would definitely say no skill goes unwasted. I use photo editing every single day as an executive editor of a sports betting company. You know, I trained in graphics, I trained in online, I use HTML. There's no, you're not going to waste a single thing you learn at the Bruin. And also that no challenge is too big. I was the first EIC from the photo department, I think in 10 years at the time. And you know, that sounded crazy to a lot of people. It never felt crazy to me. And that kind of confidence to just go into things and do really well has really been helpful for me.
I said that my life as a reporter at the Times is a continuation of what I did at Daily Bruin. As a reporter, it's basically everything that you do is extension of what you did here at Kirkhoff. Because you learn so many different skills here at the Bruin. You learn how to manage time, how to talk with sources, how to write well. Everything that carries on to my life here, I learned from here. So I would say everything really. I mean, it's hard to say one or two things that I learned from Daily Bruin that I still use because I use so many skills that I learned from here to this day.
Thanks. All right, now we're coming back to you guys. Here's the question for you. What are you doing at the Bruin that was already tying into your career opportunities or your career plans? Any volunteers? Mike, if anybody wants to talk. Don't make me get nasty on this. Okay, I'm going to close my eyes, pretend I'm not looking. Thanks for volunteering.
Well, I don't know exactly what I want to do for my career plans, but I know the big thing is something with sports probably, and so I was a sports editor last year, and I feel like I'm gaining a lot of connections through that, and just, I don't know, learning the ins and outs of the athletic department is good for that, and meeting people. So something along those lines, but, you know, I still am not exactly sure.
Wonderful. I'll find another volunteer. Thank you so much.
Pretty much a similar answer to John, but I've always known I wanted to work in sports, and this was my first opportunity to really do that. So I don't know, just like getting that experience to work on something that I really enjoy and feeling how rewarding that is will hopefully prepare me for a career in the sports industry.
Now, we're not going to fall into a pattern here. We're going to shake this up. No. You have to get out of your chair and move at least 3 chairs to find another volunteer, unless somebody puts their hand up. You got a hand up behind you. Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. So I have been using my Daily Bruin experience to kind of change my career interests and like evolve them a little bit. I became a comm major because of Daily Bruin. And right now, or I'm actually double majoring in comm and human biology and society. So my time as a copy editor has been helping me a lot to be able to synthesize information and try to make sense of like what is the most important for people to know. And I think that that's something that's really important in science right now and science communication. So I'm hoping to do something with that.
Next volunteer, hand up.
Thanks, David.
I think two things in particular. I think as a photo editor, but then also now as part of management, I think working with different people who have very different skill sets, often different interests, but yet a common goal, I think that experience at the scale of the Daily Bruin, the importance, the reach, it's more real world than anything I've had the privilege of doing thus far. And so as I look at any career, I'm leaning towards law, but wherever I go, I think working with different people who, you know, as individuals, but also as a group towards common goals, I can't imagine anything that would have been better preparation and experience for that than the Bruin. And I'm excited for, you know, this last year ahead.
One. Great. Okay, it's getting
Thanks.
closer, folks. Like it's my turn, so you don't have to get up.
I think one of the most useful aspects of being in DB Sports is the breaking coverage, and my experience writing breakings, especially for games. I've noticed that I'm having to, like I said, synthesize information really quickly to put out the first wrap, and then you're doing quotes and asking questions and how to transcribe those super quickly, and then find how those fit into the puzzle of the article you've already published. So also, like David, trying to go to law school hopefully, so I know Lawrence talked about how that's useful in the bar, how that's useful in his career in the long term. So I think working on that deadline, getting those skills and honing them, becoming better at saying what I want to say in a quick fashion and like succinctly has been super helpful. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to turn this back to the panel. Let's rephrase this just slightly. Anybody, we won't go in any particular order. Think back to what you were thinking about at Bruin and where you thought you were going to end up. Talk about what you do now. So now we get to the formal introductions without you saying, I am, and this is what I do. But think what you did, what you're doing, and whatever connection or disconnect there was. Anybody?
I can take this one, mostly because I did think I was going to law school, and now I work in sports, so I feel equipped to answer. I think everyone at Daily Bruin will go through a law school phase, and that's okay. Some of you will go to law school, some of you won't. All valid. Just want everyone to know that. I just want this to be a safe space for people to go to law school, because you all will think you want to at some point. I didn't. I think that it's super awesome if you do. I have friends who have. I have friends who are there right now, and they love it, and they did the Daily Bruin. It's definitely helped them. I think something that I noticed as editor-in-chief was I wasn't really in a mentally equipped place to be like a news reporter. I really couldn't deal with kind of the emotional, psychological burden of it, and that was something I realized, you know, luckily before my professional life, and I think sports media specifically really helped me just because I kind of was like, this is a little lower key, there's less stakes here, there's fewer, you know, humans that are having trauma that I'm reporting on, it's more, you know, fun games, photo editing for the NFL, all of that. So I think that there's definitely paths for each skill set, no matter what it is, and you can change your mind. That's kind of what I said as I was graduating. I got a job at the NFL, and I was like, you know, law school's always there. You can always go to law school. It's totally cool to go. It's probably, you know, more beneficial if you have some things in your back pocket before you do it. So that would kind of be my thought there. Just don't be afraid to change your mind. Don't be afraid to just like jump at something. You know, I think I got my job like the day of the 30 banquet. Like that was my as a senior. I got hired that day, and I was like, cool. I guess I'm going into media now. I didn't think I was before that. I was going to work at Harvard Westlake as an admissions officer until that point. So totally changed my path, and I think I've really stuck with sports. But again, totally can jump to other things too. And yes, you can change your mind. It's allowed.
So, at some point, are we going to say our names and what we do and all that?
Let's do that now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So my name is Laureen Lazarovici, and I work for the Labor Management Partnership at Kaiser Permanente, doing communications. But for me, the Daily Bruin was like, I consider the Daily Bruin my first journalism job, which it really was. Speaking about not getting paid for your work, I think I got $75 every other week, maybe Yeah, so, yeah, the stipend, so that wasn't really
I got
paid.
210.
210 every other week.
Yeah, that was like
You have to understand, we've been, over the last several months, trying to recreate what we had back in the 70s in terms of regular stipends. And the system you're in now, where you get $7 or $8 for a story, and you have to write 50 stories to move up to the next level, we're like, how did that happen?
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're still discovering that through DBEM, where
Okay.
they're at today.
We'll take that up on a separate panel. And I just knew, I always knew I wanted to be a journalist, so it was just a natural thing. There was no discovery, or you could change your mind, or you could do something different. I wanted to do it, and I did it. I worked for the LA Weekly right out of college. Very different newspaper then than it is now, so if you see it around these days, that's not the publication I worked for. So this question, the question, Paul, the way you had it is like almost moot for me, because it was just like Daily Bruin was my first journalism job, and that's that. Yeah. I have a couple things to say about law school. Okay, you first, and then I'll talk about law school.
Hello, I'm Amy. When I think my story is really, there's a lot of zigzags. So I was an editor at the paper almost a decade ago. I was the arts and entertainment, lifestyle, and theater. My primary goal was to bring a street style column, which we did do, to the paper. And when I actually graduated high school, my senior year, I started a YouTube channel. So I was one of the first fashion and lifestyle YouTube content creators on the platform. And this was at a time where social media was definitely not what it was today. The word influencer wasn't even a thing. When I was doing my taxes, I didn't know what to write. And I just kept doing it because when I went to UCLA, I thought, okay, I'm going to be a comm major. I wanted to be a writer at like the New York Times. I knew I loved writing, and so I came to the paper to, experience all of that. But all the while, I was still uploading fashion and beauty videos on YouTube. I was also doing day in my life vlogs, working at the Daily Bruin. And these were all just passion projects. I was just so excited to write. I was so excited to create videos, and fortunately enough, I feel like working at the paper made me realize I don't love journalism this much too, because I gained like 20 pounds, I lost my hair, I freaked out, I had a mental breakdown, so I was like, I don't think I love journalism enough to do this, but all the while I was still doing my YouTube channel. And everything that I pretty much learned at the paper, I did for myself, but on the internet. So by the time that I graduated, my YouTube channel kind of took off, and I've been doing social media, all different types, from content creation to just leading a team of 6. We have web developers, freelance graphic designer. I have agents and managers now. And one of my favorite things to do is to speak at colleges to just motivate young people to do what they like. And so I think just personally, everything that I learned at the paper, it was kind of like doing it for myself, but I guess like the daily Amy Lee on social media, and having that type of formal background in writing definitely helped, I feel, elevate my content rather than just, I don't know, there's just some really bad writing on the internet. And so I think just everything that I learned at the Daily Bruin, I got to harness it in a more innovative way by, utilizing social media and just building an audience that way. So, and then just recently last year, I transitioned into women's mental health coaching, and actually everything I learned about the paper and just how to tell a powerful story, to communicate with others, as well as utilizing social media to gain my clientele. That's all been beneficial. So, and I'm 28 now. I feel like I'm gonna go through another 5 more career transitions just because I'm always following my flow, and you don't have to pick one thing. So that's my story.
A couple quick things here. How many followers on YouTube?
I quit a year ago, but at that time I had over 500,000.
Wow. Inspired a little bit there?
I would watch Amy's videos when I was applying to the Daily Bruin reference, A fair
So I want to make here, think about what she said about storytelling and how that's been a part of a lot of the stuff. That's one of the skills you get, and that's not just a journalism skill. I will tell you in my own career that keeps circling back. When a couple of years ago, an organization I was volunteering with sent me an email one day saying, we're creating a new position, we're wondering if you want to be two people who would have the title storyteller in residence. I wrote back immediately and said, I have no idea what the hell that means, but yeah, before you change your mind, good. The skills you get as storytellers, identifying that one line and getting that out there to draw somebody in so that they do not walk away from the story. Patrick and I had a faculty, we had a staff advisor on the Bruin in the 70s, John Fleischman, who taught us the basics. John's advice was, do not sit down and describe what happened last night. Sit down and tell your reader in line 1 what that means to them. Never lost that, and it's seen me through many, many great presentations where people say, how do you do that? I go, Daily Bruin, we run that. Next person on the panel.
Oh. I thought knowing what to speak about law school for a little bit, but I too had applied to law school. I took an LSAT. Not a pretty good score, if I can say so. But I ultimately took my path to where I'm at. I'm John Park. I'm a reporter at the LA Times, covering Asian American communities. And I graduated from 2017. I was management in my junior year. I was an assistant news editor in my sophomore year. I was a news writer in my freshman year. So my path, despite my, doodling in law school, it was very linear compared to everybody else. But still, I think something that I learned a lot from Daily Bruin is that you got to try different things. And college is a moment and a time where you can afford to fail, right? Because the consequences are not as high as failing in real life, for the lack of better words. And I think Daily Bruin really gave me an opportunity to explore all the different paths. I cross-trained a lot. I cross-trained in copy, in data. I think I wrote like a sports story once. And it really gives you the opportunity to explore what your interests are. And I think that's something that I took a lot away from, is that I didn't have to go through 2-3 years of my life after college trying to figure out what I want, because I already did that in college through Daily Bruin. And Daily Bruin really helped me form my belief that this is the path that I want to go into. So I think that's my advice to folks, is that try different things, don't be afraid to fail, and get a sense of what you want to do. And also, do recognize that, even then things could change, right? The career path that you might explore might change. Journalism is not an easy industry for many, many reasons. Many of it has nothing to do with you guys or us. It's, at the very top that's the problematic, right? So just recognize all of that, I think. That would be my advice.
Well, let me start by saying I am so impressed with how your generation deals with a world that is so much more complex than it was back in the Jurassic era when I grew up. When I was at the Bruin in the mid-70s, there were basically 3 choices. There was print, radio, and television. And that was it. That was the entire media spectrum. To Paul's point, learning how to tell a dramatic, moving, compelling story was the key element. And basically there were 3 different formulas you had to learn if you were going to work in different media. But the reality was, back in my day, people pretty much balkanized themselves into one medium and stayed there in their career. And now, as Amy's story exemplifies, you have to be a Renaissance person to be successful in media. You have to learn multiple disciplines. You have to become skillful in them. Creating videos, video editing, effective messaging on social media, writing on immediate turnaround for the internet, writing on slightly longer deadlines if you're going to be in a broadcast or in a printed publication. And to me, it's overwhelming what you face now. And I don't know that as a dinosaur that I'm the best person to advise how to pursue that. But I think the key elements are what we've heard from the panel is during this time, you find out what really moves you. And you pursue that, and you pick up all the skills you need to be able to make that work. I'll give you a quick bio as long as I've got the mic. So I decided that telling stories with pictures sounded like the most fun for me. So that's how I ended up going into television. I dabbled a little bit in radio, did a very brief internship at the LA Times, just 1 quarter. Unfortunately, that was the quarter I was managing editor of the Bruin, so it put me in an incredible time crunch. I wasn't able to do all the things I wanted to do. But I did a stint as a news editor, worked a couple of years as a writer. One thing I do remember from my era, though, was intense competition among the writers. It's kind of trivial. The object was not quality, it was quantity. Who could get the most bylines in a quarter? And so there was 1 quarter, I think I got 40 bylines. And most of the articles were crap, but...
Was that the quarter I got 41?
Yeah, it may have been. And so then, as now, getting that first job out of college is still the hardest thing. If you can get that first job, prove yourself, you can get on the escalator and pretty much stay in the industry, but you have to be flexible because what they're looking for, it's a moving target, it keeps changing.
John, would you address that briefly? Talk about the different places you've been in the brief period of time you've been writing.
Yeah, so my first internship was in Orange County for working for the Register. Actually, that's not my first internship because I interned at Santa Monica Daily Press, which is, you find out when you go to the office on your first day how small it is, because it is literally like smaller than my apartment. It's half of my studio apartment that I live in Koreatown, and there are 3 people there sitting back to back. So that was my first internship. Second one was the Register, which was a little bigger, and then I worked in Indiana for about half a year working as a news reporter for a paper there. And then I went to Orange County Register to work for a reporter at a full-time job because they liked me as an intern there, and they wanted to bring me back. And then I went to Sacramento Bee, working to cover state labor and economy, and then now I'm at Times. So it's weird because I keep kind of a grand slam when it comes to working for a newspaper. I work for Gannett, I work for Alden, I work for McClatchy, I work for now LA Times. So I think what's the other big newspaper chain? Tribune or, yeah, I'm like 1 away from filling my bingo card.
So all that said, what are you going to do after lunch today? I'm just trying to ringer in Ken Peterson, who also is from the era that Patrick and I were on the Bruin, because he's had an amazing string of things. Tell him what you do and tell him your career moves.
Sure. Thanks. So I am heading into my 34th year in communications with the Monterey Bay Aquarium. I have started out doing traditional PR media relations, was communications director for a while. I'm now morphed into something they call senior content strategist, which is kind of a free card to do executive communications for senior leadership, managing social media accounts, speech writing, and trying to connect the dots and bring institutional memory forward, because most people have not been there for a third of a century. And I still have the post-it note brain of a journalist and the connectivity that makes good storytelling and lets you find the stories and they connect the dots for impact. I did not start out thinking I was going to be in communications and public relations. My first job was up in a small town north of Sacramento, Yuba City, due to a connection with one of my classmates at the Daily Bruin, Dave McNary, who is after he passed away, created a scholarship for Daily Bruin staffers in his memory. He knew somebody who knew there was a job, and 6 months later he said, hey, they got another job, you want one? I said, yeah. And that it was 3 years in a very small town, covering every type of story, going from entry-level reporter, knowing nothing, to managing editor of a 6-day daily. And then I said, this is not the place I want to live, this is not the pace at which I want to work. And I found a little reporting job at a weekly in Carmel, California, which turned into about a year of vacation relief reporting for the San Jose Mercury News, which turned into a full-time job at the Monterey Daily, and ultimately led me into that. Early adopter in social media, because I had the curiosity, which is everything that a good reporter should have. What is this new thing called Twitter? And would share that with colleagues in the unicorn profession who were not quite yet up to speed. So using storytelling skills, writing to deadline, speed and accuracy, and ultimately having fun.
I've heard some of you in our brief conversations talk about the importance of working together, writing together, getting to know each other, and life just plays wonderful games on us. Ken graduated, about 74? I graduated 76, totally went different directions. He ended up on a pine cone in Carmel. I ended up working as the assistant to the director of the Monterey Peninsula Museum of Art. We had a little kerfuffle there, and I left in kind of a rage, and 3 days later was the managing editor of the local arts magazine. Ken apparently saw something about it, and he called me one night. He didn't even know he was there. He says, problem over at the museum, right? I said, oh God, yeah. He says, can I interview you? We got that in the paper. And afterwards, we didn't talk about it a lot. He did his thing. I just told my story on what I was doing. But I always, when we were in journalism together, I always thought, we're looking for impact. And impact wasn't immediate. He wrote his story, made the community aware of the problems that were happening there. And a year later, that director was gone. This was not a revenge plot. I was not happy with what was happening. We had a first-grade director, and somebody else came in and was really messing up the legacy of that person to the detriment of the people in the town. So combined with his journalism skills and my willingness to say, here's what I saw, it did have an impact. So think about the connections you're making now, not knowing where they're going to go, but they will go. They're really important. Let's get you all involved again. Passing the mic again, I don't think I need to point to a volunteer. Who would like to ask a question to the panel up to what we've been talking about so far? Anybody? How we put you to sleep already? I saw a twitch. We'll do the same thing. Just pass that around and we'll finish it. Let's get some Q&A going with Ken.
Okay. Yeah, my question was specifically for Mackenzie because I really resonated with when you said you realized just like emotionally you weren't able to be a news reporter because, I mean, of course I've loved being in the Daily Bruin and it's meant so much to me, but you know, like there was a time where I thought I really wanted to pursue journalism, but I've also found myself in that place where I'm not really cut out for reporting on people's trauma, dealing with really hard events. So I guess my question would be, you know, as someone though who still wants to stay in like the creation of stories and content that really impacts people, what types of job opportunities are out there and what can I look for?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. I feel like I'm louder without the mic. So I would say I didn't do a good job with my bio. So I was at UCLA, graduated in 2018, was editor-in-chief, was assistant photo editor the year before that, photo editor the year before that. So a quick 3-year run. That is not too common, but I would say that I kind of realized, you know, I was on the photo side of things, and there's obviously news there. It's a little different, though, what you're photographing. I didn't have any really big, you know, events. The fire was the year I was editor-in-chief, actually, so I wasn't photographing something kind of dramatic like that. But when I got to be editor-in-chief, you have to deal with just so much, and you have to kind of see what both you're putting, you know, in a leadership position, what you're putting your journalists through, what you're putting your photographers through, what you're putting your, you know, both readers and people who are your sources through. And that just really weighed heavy on me. I kind of was like, I don't think I can do this full time. And for me, that was kind of like, okay, well, what skills do I have and how can I apply them elsewhere? I thought about law school, of course, and I think, you know, if you're more interested in sports media, that's sports media and sports journalism are not the same thing, and I just want to clear that distinction. Sports journalism is kind of, your Ben Bolges, your LA Times. Sports media is more, I worked at NFL media. Obviously, when you're working for a league, you're not covering it objectively. Now I work in sports betting, and that's a whole different beast, but I would say that's kind of your option. I think there is certainly an element to more arts reporting that is still heavy, but I think there's some lighter sides to it too. So I would say it's just kind of finding what you're most interested in and looking at the different sides of it. Maybe you love arts, but you're not really ready to be an arts reporter, but you could go work at a museum or you could do something like that. I think that there's so many applicable skills, and communication really does feel like a gateway when you have these skill sets specifically. So I think that's kind of what I went with. And when I had the opportunity as a photo editor at NFL right away, I was like, yeah, I'll jump on that. That's perfect. And now I'm back to editing. But I think there's a lot you can do, and I would also say editing is a lot lighter, even when I'm in sports media. But I think that being an editor is a path too that shouldn't be ignored. Editors are kind of in high demand. I've really benefited from being an editor. So don't feel like your only option is to be a reporter, to be a writer, to be a photographer. You totally can go the editing route, and there's some kind of weirder paths there that I would say you naturally have to. You're going to be a beat reporter at first, or a reporter of some kind. Versus if you're an editor, there's some kind of different ways to get there.
Something that I want to say, I think, to add on to Mackenzie is that no job is less than the other. I work in hard news, right? And people ask me, oh, it's such a hard job, how do you do it? And I go to them, some of them are sports writers, and I just tell them, I don't know how you write a sports story on deadline, within 5 minutes of the game ending whistle. I just don't know how you do that. There's a joke that, election day, you get pizza because you're working late at night, you're working on breaking, and sports reporters are going like, every day for me is election day. They're on deadline all the time. So I just want to discuss that. It's that no job is less or more difficult than the other. No job is less or more important than the other. You might be covering a topic that you might consider soft, but there's still a lot of skill, a lot of challenges, a lot of issues that you have to go through to do those jobs well, and those jobs are just as important as covering hard news.
Definitely, great point. Thank you. Yeah.
Broadcast mic on, whoever has some questions.
I just wanted to ask, Laureen, you said you wanted to talk about law school, so I was just curious about what you had to say about law school.
I would say if you want to go to law school and do something with a law degree, then you should go to law school. If you don't know what else you want to do with your life, or you're confused, or you can't decide, don't go to law school. I see Lawrence nodding vigorously as a person who went to law school and became a lawyer. And I'm sure there's more to that story that you may or may not want to chat with people about. In my kind of era at UCLA, which was the late 80s, I just saw a lot of people kind of at the end of 4 years going, well, I don't really know what's next for me. I guess I'll go to law school. Law school is basically trade school for doing the law. Lawrence, is that fair? No. I'm gonna say that and sort of stick to it. I mean, it's like you wouldn't go to nursing school if you didn't want to be a nurse. It might be interesting, but it's also like learning a very specific trade. And there's lots of cool and fun things you can do with a law degree. Frankly, the people I know who are lawyers, like what you kind of stereotypically think of as a lawyer, are miserable. And they feel like they can't, what did you say, Mackenzie? They can't change their mind, like they're stuck in it forever.
Lawrence, I do have a second mic here if you'd like to.
I like the ad-libs from the back.
Yeah, I mean, my husband has a law degree. He teaches at the law school here and also teaches labor studies, and he knew that for what he wanted his career to be about, he needed a law degree. Oh gee, you weren't kidding.
Remember when you contradicted me early on?
That's right.
Revenge, senora.
That's right. This is my karmic comeuppance. Right here.
Allow me to retort.
Notice the fine use of the word tort. Subliminally there.
Okay, so I wanted to be a sports reporter, and I wrote for 2 years at the Bruin, and I was sports editor. And I applied for internships and found out that I wasn't very good at it. And so I ended up in law school. I mean, if you're really good at it, you get to be a journalist. You know, and then you end up in law school and you write really poorly. But after that, my goal was actually to be a lawyer of a university. And I went on to Stanford to do higher ed, and then on to law school and practice corporate and real estate law. And the thing I would say about law school is this: yeah, it's hard, it's expensive, but to talk about the trade thing, I think you come out with a toolkit for a lot of things in this country because you fundamentally understand how the rules work. And it's a lot more than just constitutional law and things that you hear about abortion rights and all these issues. It's basics of contracts, business, property, your inheritance from your uncle, and things like that. We all go through that. So, but yeah, you need to think about, the 3 pretty tough years and pretty grueling path to making partner. But I wouldn't particularly dissuade you from it, and be happy to talk to you guys about it after the fact.
He's got a billboard on the 405 saying, looking for a career, call Lauren. That's really cool. We're going to do this real quickly. No presentation is a real presentation without some resources. If you're interested in these articles, you can catch me later. I'll send you the deck, or just catch me by email. But Careers for Writers, this is a really good article. As you can see from the headline, 24 Awesome Jobs. We did some screenshots. Unfortunately, if you're sitting in the back, you can't see these very well. But 8 through 14 includes public relations specialist, marketing communication specialist, video game writer, proposal writer, journalist, content strategist, and translator. Yeah?
Young content strategist.
You've done all this, right? Ken actually covered 8 through 14. That's what I did. Grant writers, I've done some of that myself. Film critic, web content writer, social media. There we go, social media. Specialist travel writer, proofreader, greeting card writer, ghostwriter, and a parking meter character. So, lots of stuff. Harlan Coyer wrote this great article about trips for transitioning to communications careers. And if you can't read it, first paragraph is, for many journalists, deciding to become public relations professionals can be tough. In our days, we actually had a very bad attitude towards PR people.
Oh, yeah.
We had a lovely
The
word.
dark side.
The dark side, flackies.
Flax.
And many of us, the gods played against us and we became flackies, and we lived productive lives. You know, some of us were not allowed to have children because we were told, you're flaky, you can't do that. But anyway, Carmen continues, though the hours can be grueling and the pay can be low, reporters pride themselves in breaking stories as well as communicating with and informing the public. I miss those things. I even miss the hectic deadlines. But even though I still sometimes work on freelance articles on weekends and during time off, I don't regret quitting journalism as a full-time career. So options there. We've talked about the idea that there are many doors, and that's what you're hearing here. I just want to emphasize it. That's something to keep in mind. If you see something that makes sense to you, the worst thing that can happen is you follow it, you belly flop, and then you back into the next thing, or you go back to your previous boss and say, it didn't work out, can I come back? And usually they're very grateful to have you back. I don't know about these days, maybe somebody who's John, or those of you that are in the early parts of your career, do you still find that if you don't burn bridges, doors can reopen?
I've had long-standing returning job offers from at least the last 3 companies I left.
Wow.
Maybe I'm just great, but no.
Although that couldn't possibly be it.
I do think there's something to be said for just like generally speaking, my life advice: be a good coworker, be good to the people you manage, be good to the people who manage you, be good to your peers, be good to your cleaning staff, be good to your security people. I have had 2 security people at 2 separate places go talk to the person I was interviewing and recommend me. I didn't try to do that, I just had a nice conversation with them while I was waiting. And I think there's just something to be said for just being like, not quite a personality hire, I do have skills, but, but there's something to be said for being someone that people enjoy working with and being around. And that's just kind of key, and I think that's really important, especially if you're trying to return somewhere or just keep that relationship. You know, CBS Sports, when I left, the director of editorial was like, come back when you're ready. And you know, that's really huge for me to just have that as like a backboard. I think I took when I left my last job, I took it out of my Twitter bio. I didn't do anything else, and he like messaged me within 10 minutes. I was telling Nathan, my husband, but it like, people really start to like you in your work, and I think the skills you get at the Bruin make you really exceptional employees. And I say this now as someone who manages full-time, part-time, freelance people. You're a step above. You just have got a harder workload than a lot of people do at this age. So just really harness that and work really effectively and ask the right questions, and you will be dearly missed every time you leave.
There's another underpinning here. There's been enough laughter in this audience that every one of us carries, to the best of our abilities, a sense of humor into our work. And I think most of us subscribe to the idea that we don't believe our own PR. The most dangerous thing is when you're in a room, somebody starts telling you how great you are. I love being a trainer, which is my primary work outside of writing. And when I get together with my best training buddies across the country, we used to spend the first 10 minutes where somebody would go, oh man, you're so great. And the other would go, no, you're so great. Fine. New rule, we don't have that much time. We know we're great. Let's stop that. Let's talk about what support to us. But the underlying sense of humor really takes you a long way. And if you tell a joke about belly flops, you can go back to the old Marx Brothers movies and watch that wonderful moment in one of the early ones where Groucho Marx is scripted in the film to tell a joke that obviously flops. And there's this moment as an audience member where you go, God, that wasn't funny. And he looks right into the camera and he says, well, they can't all be funny. And then he moves on. And it takes you a couple seconds to realize they scripted that. They made a bad joke and then they made it funny because he said it wasn't a bad joke. So if you have that underlying sense of humanity and you're confident in yourself, but you don't pretend that you're better than everybody else, you're going to see that that's what runs through the panel numbers up here.
Can I make an observation?
I certainly hope so.
What struck me is the list of writing opportunities is that journalist was like, what, number 12 or 14 or something?
That was way at the top. These were other things that came.
Yeah. And then we came across journalist again. The reality is, and I think one of the messages here loud and clear is, if you want to pursue writing as a career, which is admirable, you need to have not only a plan B, but a plan Z, D, all the way through Omega. Because the landscape is changing rapidly. And there is more self-publishing going on now. And if you set your sights on one of the traditional, so-called plum jobs, those are very rare and they're disappearing. You need to be not only extraordinarily talented, which you all are, but you also need to be lucky to be landed in the right place at the right time. Especially so in what I did, television news. Because there are a lot of people who are qualified to do it at a competent level, and who gets the jobs, sometimes it's the luck of the draw. And if you don't get one of the good jobs in one of the big markets, there's not much money to be made in TV news. You don't want to be a reporter the rest of your life at an entry level or even medium level market, because it doesn't pay anything. You can't raise a family on what you're going to make at the lower rungs of journalism.
Unless it's a very small family.
And in the print world, the smaller papers, forgive me for the reality check here, but the smaller papers are disappearing. They just cannot be monetized. They cannot work anymore. And the big papers, the giant marquee papers, increasingly are relying on sugar daddies to keep them alive. You've got Patrick Soon-Shiong at the LA Times, you've got Jeff Bezos. I don't know where this is going, but keep those options through Omega on the table, because you may need them. On the other hand, you may be the next Matea Gold or next John, who lands at the LA Times and is going to have a great career. But it requires more than skill, it also requires some luck.
and you've heard from a couple of panelists, be entrepreneurial with this. Go where the opportunities are. You know, you are at the point in your careers where you're starting to think about the industry we're talking about. We don't know what it's going to look like in 5 or 10 years, and we don't pretend to. You're going to be shaping it. I think that's why those of us heavily involved in DBAN are so excited. It's a chance to go back and see how things have changed. See, those of you that are going to inherit that, you're stewards at the Bruin until the next group of stewards come along, but you're also stewards of the changing face of our media landscape and our communications landscapes. And that's a really powerful set of opportunities for you.
So, Paul, I'd like to add to that because I think some of you know that we have a mentorship program that folks like us mentoring Daily Bruin students, and I like to think about that as co-mentorship because I need to know what's new and what's happening now in order to do my work and further my own career. I managed to get on some social media, Facebook and Twitter, Instagram. I tried Snapchat for a while, and I was like, this is stupid. I took it off my phone. And I'm not going to do TikTok. I'm just not. You got to draw the line somewhere.
I would invite you to join a podcast that I'm going to be part of next Thursday night, where a friend of mine who's in training will be talking about TikTok as a lifelong learning device.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yes. No, I know there's not a ton of great things happening with that, but okay.
You can tell Laureen and I really like each other. It's so much fun.
And speaking of Plan Bs, Paul, your career is kind of a case study in the Plan B, C, D.
It's called a mess. Yeah.
It's called like, I've done journalism. I think I'll go to library school now. I've done library stuff. I think I'll go become a trainer. And just like keep learning new things, keep doing new things, keep also like paying it, like doing things that are about uplifting other people. And frankly, especially if you're in a position of privilege in our society, which means being male and being white, and you gotta like uplift everybody else and dedicate your career to that, or else you're just kind of like a bump on a log, or other things like that. So don't be a bump on a log, be like Paul. Do not be like Paul. And I had a point to all this and I can't remember what the hell it was. Okay.
You know, the best stories you tell, the ones you really put yourselves into and give the extra effort to, are the ones that you care about the most, you're personally passionate about. And I'd say that's an undervalued lodestar for thinking about what you want to do with your professional life. What really fires you up? What's going to make you happy every day going to work? And what stories do you want to tell that will make the world a little bit better for you having told it? Someone who's going through some struggles and finding a way forward, or was helped to get forward. What are the institutions and organizations that are making a difference? I'll just say in my personal career, when I was working for the newspapers, I was writing a lot of stories about coastal and environmental issues because they mattered. I thought these are important things, they need extra attention. I'm not bringing, I'd say, a bias about those, but simply, I guess there's an inherent bias in telling those stories to the exclusion of some different stories. And ultimately, I think that's one reason I wound up landing at the job that became the longest part of my career. So think about stories that you want to tell, and there are certainly examples of people. There's a fellow named Baratunde Olatunji, who you may see as PBS special he just did on organizations serving people of color, helping them connect with the outdoors. He's got a whole podcast on the role of money in society and people who are using money in non-conventional ways to help people who've traditionally been dispossessed from power and access to wealth. There are people who have created their own storytelling around issues of the environment or women's rights or any major topic. So if you have a personal passion, there's a way to bring that to your work and monetize it and be happy every day of the job.
Let's do some edits. Let's do that.
Yeah. We're just talking about flexibility in our careers, you know.
Breaking up.
Is there anybody in the deep end that's not on that list now? Any questions in response to what you just heard? Yes. You want that or?
I'm okay. When you all graduated, did any of you feel pressured to consider master's programs or any other schooling, journalism school, or any other
Except law school.
programs? Besides law school.
Yeah, I think we should talk about the kind of like issues around masters in journalism.
Are you going to make me do a new slide now? Or?
Yes. Well, you said be flexible. There's this other school across town that does have a master's, big master's program. And boy, does it, I'll admit to myself, I'll admit to all of you, I looked at it, I might have even started filling out an application when I was feeling a few years ago.
Get some soap and water, make it wash.
I know, when I was feeling kind of stuck in my career. That's also a thing about graduate school. It's not just like, oh, you're in your 4th year at UCLA, go, I don't know what I want to do next, I think I'll go to law school. It's also when you're in your career and you're feeling kind of stuck and, you've been doing the same thing for longer than you want to. And it's like, what the hell am I going to do next? And it's like, maybe I'll go to grad school, which sometimes is great, but it's also sometimes a cop-out and a place to go hide. I have to say, I got these two are going to come like rip my limbs off, and I don't blame you. I got far enough into the process where I talked to one of the admissions people, and you can sort of tell how these master's programs are by how into you they are. They're really not that into you. They're into your money. And she said, the most important thing about this program are the connections you make. You become part of the family. Yeah. And I was like, and that's when I stepped out of it, because it's like, first of all, I don't need the connections. I've been in this industry for enough years that I have those connections myself. And I'm not willing to pay for graduate school to make connections. And that just told me the rigor wasn't there, if that's the main selling point. I think working at the Daily Bruin is way better than going to graduate school. It's the work. It's the actual work you do in journalism and communications. I think if you went to say UCLA and majored in whatever, biology, chemistry, American history, English literature, and did not ever work on the Daily Bruin or any of the other student media, and suddenly had this revelation that you wanted to be a journalist, then it's time to go get some journalism training, because you're going to need to get it somehow. But I think if you've gone to UCLA and worked on the Daily Bruin, I don't think there's any value added to a graduate degree in journalism.
To go off of what Laureen said, I kind of resonate almost with the opposite of that. I was a communication major at UCLA, I graduated 3 years. I did no internships my entire time in school because I was really going quick. And by the time I graduated, I was like, oh, I don't want to be a journalist. Oh no, that's all I did in college. I only have Daily Bruin, I didn't do any other clubs. Now I'm a part-time photo editor at NFL Media. I can't do this for 4 years. And so I looked at graduate school kind of on the opposite side to say, well, I need another skill. But the thing I would say, I did apply to USC and I got in. But I don't want to give them my money. So I kind of was like to myself, well, you know what, I'm gonna see what I can do for like, I think I gave myself like 2 or 3 years was kind of my thought. And just go into whatever you go into and say, you know, like, what can I make of this? Talk to your bosses, talk to your coworkers. I was at NFL Media. I was like, not a gossip, but I had all the gossip. Do you know what I mean? Like, be the person who everyone tells everything to. And then you know it all. And so when I had the opportunity the next season, I knew I wasn't going to be a photo editor forever. So when an editorial research position was open, I could go be in the talent's ear while they're on TV, and I could be writing and editing these research packets that go to the entirety of NFL Media, or sending out newsletters that go to all the talent. I jumped at that, and that kind of, you can build blocks within whatever space you're in, as long as you're kind of like Game of Thronesy enough about it. And I think there's something to be said for that. Just tell the people who are around you what you want. If you have a mentor on demand, if you don't too, tell us what you're interested in and how we can help you, and tell the people around you too. When I kind of said, I don't think I'm going to be a photo editor forever, to one of my bosses, she was like, well, what are you interested in? And you know, when I did apply for research, she totally helped me with that. And people will do that. People are really prone to helping you and connecting with you. So don't be like too afraid of that. But I do think you don't really need the graduate school skills to do something different. Also, if you're kind of thinking, I'm not going to be a journalist, now what? You have a lot of skills. See where that gets you. Give yourself a couple of years after school. You know, most people I've talked to who did go to graduate school, especially right out, they're like, I wish I took 2-3 years to just kind of do whatever. And then that's only going to help you with any graduate program.
I will add to that and say that I did not go right on to grad school after leaving UCLA. I went back when I was looking at a career change, and I realized there was a graduate program I could go into that would promote me into that. So I went in my late 30s and got my first MA, emphasis on the word first. I got a second degree about 15 years later when librarianship had really become an important part of my life. And I didn't do it to become a reference librarian. I was actually leaving my full-time work at San Francisco Public, setting out as a consultant, working with libraries and other organizations. But the question for myself at that point was, what do I need to know about the history of librarianship and the future of it that will help me? I went through 3 different programs before I finally found the one that was flexible enough to get me there. So in my early 50s, I got my Master of Library and Information Science degree, never with the intention of working at a library reference desk, but with the intention of seeing what was going on in learning in libraries, especially e-learning, online learning. That was about 10 years before COVID. So the model's here. Your education needs to serve your needs, and it's not all going to be one concentrated part of your life. John asked a series of really interesting questions by email that he wanted me to pose here. Since we're talking about building career, I'm going to start with the first of the 3 he asked. How soon should students start looking for internships and jobs? And is it okay to balance between different sectors, journalism, PR, to non-writing jobs? Amy, we haven't heard much from you in a while. Any thoughts on that?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What's your favorite donut?
Switching from journalism, PR.
How soon should students start looking for internships, and is it okay to jump between different sectors?
I feel like as far as internships, I feel, a lot of my philosophy is about, following your intuition and doing what feels right. So everything I did while I was at UCLA was just because, that interested me. Like if I had even 5% of a spark there, I did it. And I feel like as far as interning, I think I got my first one in junior year, and it just felt right. But I've had friends who have done it since freshman year, sophomore year. I would definitely say a lot of the students at UCLA suffer from imposter syndrome, so I feel like it might not help you if you're doing internships at the very last minute, because that's just going to worsen that wound. But do what feels right, and I feel like as far as switching, I think that is also intuitive and more about following what feels good and right for you. If you're doing things out of scarcity mindset, or because there's not enough time, similar to the law school and the master, getting your master's, I don't think that following that scarcity mindset, or kind of, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You just, nothing's good enough, I don't know what to do, what I'm going to do, and you think this is going to be it. Try to do instead, oh, that kind of seems interesting. Does this light me up? Is there a spark here? And you have to try on a lot of shoes before you realize some of them just don't fit. So my advice is just going to be to really follow your intuition, do what feels right, and doing things out of more of an abundance mindset. Because like I think Jong said, you know, you have so much opportunity to quote unquote fail, but to me, failure is literally not getting up and just doing it. If I got up and I did it and I still fell flat on my face, that's not failure to me. To me, that's a win, because at least I had the courage to do so and to find out. So definitely try everything, and whatever sparks come up, even if it's just a little, definitely give yourself the permission to do that, because UCLA, or our time here, that's pretty much the vacation before real life starts. So do it all. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I have something to add on that. Hi, my name is Nathan. I graduated last year in 2021. I was the online director, and I was assistant online editor, and I was the president of Comfort before that. I did 6 internships when I was in school. These were all for software engineering, so probably like a little different. But I figured I had something to add. You can take time off from school to do internships. Like you can just take a quarter off and do an internship. That's like a good full chunk of time. You can also, like, you may get to a point in your Daily Bruin career where it's like more advantageous for you to do an internship like during school, or like it's very okay like to get to a point where you can, like, you kind of have to be selfish in your career, right? Like, you know, and know what's best for you. And there can be a point where, you know, maybe taking like an LA Times internship or doing like a part-time internship with another media company in LA is more advantageous for you than, you know, continuing on with the Daily Bruin or something like that. So yeah, like those are also options. You don't need to just worry about the summer. You can do things during the year.
If you're wondering the obvious question, how do I start identifying internships? Let's do a D-band commercial. John, you and Lawrence are doing an internship list that is a resource for these students. Would you tell them about that?
Yeah, so we're...
Imagine that. We're not PBS. This is our paid political advertisement. I do approve this message.
So I do have a newsletter that I send out on a semi-regular basis on all the job listing and internships that I will send out very soon, and we'll continue to send out. And then we are currently working on creating a list of internship at prominent papers, digital outlets, and such to share. So more to come very soon.
Let me amplify on Amy, Nathan, and John. It can't be emphasized enough. An internship, if you want to work in journalism, is the single most important thing you can do while you're at UCLA. It is the best way to Laureen's point, to make connections, to meet people in the business. And speaking of what I know best, which is broadcast journalism, TV news, that's the best way to get your foot in the door. And it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a job at the station where you get an internship with, but all the people that you meet, they know the people in the industry, and they're going to refer you to another market where you can get that first job and work your way back to LA, New York, or Chicago, or you know, Houston, wherever you want to end up. And just add one more note to that. At Channel 4, where I spent 38 years, USC Annenberg, truth must be told, had a look on the newsroom internships. I never found out what their secret was, but it drove me nuts. I never saw a kid from UCLA with an internship at Channel 4.
Guess what group is working on that issue right now?
You know, Cal State Fullerton's got a pretty good journalism program. Cal State Northridge, we see interns from there, but never from UCLA. We really want to change that.
And something I want to tell everyone, for internships, jobs, whatever, you need to have a fantastic elevator pitch. You need to practice it. You need to have someone critique it. You need to be able to say, oh, I'm Mackenzie Posse. I'm currently the executive editor at Odds Gym. I do X, Y, and Z. I've done this impactful thing. Graduated from UCLA 2018, where I served as editor-in-chief. You need to be able to give a 60-second presentation on why you're fantastic, and you need to start every call with that after kind of your pleasantries. And that's going to be so key. I didn't do that at first, and then Nathan, there's this really great book called Cracking the Coding Interview. If anyone's a CS student, I'm sure you've heard of it. But they have a whole page on it, and I just didn't think to do that for the longest time because that just kind of wasn't the conversation format unless you make it the conversation format. So have your elevator pitch down, have actionable things you've done, how many people you managed, how many stories you wrote, how many stories you edited, weekly, whatever it might be, and just really have that down. If you have a mentor, send it to them, like type it up, send it to them, practice it with them on a call. If you don't, like bug us, we'll listen to mine. Nathan has listened to mine like 3,000 times probably at this point. So just have a really good elevator pitch and be ready to start every call with that, and I promise it really will set you apart.
I'm going to add to that as somebody who trains people on how to do this. When we do elevators pitches, I tell people, you got a 30-second ride, you're only going 4 floors. And invariably, there'll be somebody that will have about 12 or 15 lines. I go, that was a good pitch, but that's only if you're in the Empire State Building elevator. And make it short and brief. And the second thing is, I try to keep it to 3 or 4 lines to start with the goal of ending with something that makes the person want to ask more. But a quick one for me is I'm a writer, trainer, presenter, consultant. I help people match up with opportunities. People go, what does that mean? It's like, oh good, I got another 4 floors of elevator ride with them. Put it on them. It's not all about us talking about what we do. It's about the value we bring to them. I worked in HR. It's about the value we bring to them.
So
Quick note on the elevator pitch. Just a quick story. This is a book by Alan Shipknock, my contemporary at UCLA, and he was a volleyball writer in his sophomore year, and he got a summer job as a starter at Pebble Beach Golf Course. And the editors of Sports Illustrated walked in looking for a tea time, and guess what Alan had? An elevator pitch. And a somehow creative tea time that just showed up for these people on Pebble Beach. The next thing we knew, Alan was in New York for a full year internship with SI. This is his 4th book. So wow, practice that pitch.
That's a great story. That's great storytelling. Get a prop. And a prop, yes. About internships. If you follow me on Twitter, and I'll give you a card with my Twitter handle, I retweet internships, journalism internships and jobs. I also tweet a lot of other stuff, so I'm sorry you'll have to put up with all of that also.
So I'm going to kind of circle back to your question about graduate schools and loop into internships. UC Santa Cruz has a phenomenal program in science communication. So if you have any interest in telling science stories, that's a graduate program that really works. And people from there wind up getting stringer freelance positions in the New York Times or Washington Post or what have you that turn into jobs and careers. The other is thinking about internships in non-traditional places. So Monterey Bay Aquarium has a film and video unit, and we have film and video interns who will create a bank of visual clips of what they can do telling a video story. The Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, which is independent from us, but does some of the leading edge science and engineering and studying the global ocean, has a communications internship there that uses video storytelling and science writing. So these are not at major newspapers, but they are the type of science that will get you a job at Scientific American, at The Atlantic, at The New Yorker, because you've proven yourself to be a gifted, multifaceted storyteller in an area that not everybody can tell great stories in.
Okay, panelists, keep your eyes on the audience as I introduce the next slide. They don't know what's on behind them because they haven't looked at it yet. I have put, no, you're not supposed to look. I have put their favorite food up there, and you're supposed, no. I've got a slide up that says dream job. Let's do a lightning round. Starting over there with John, 2 lines. What is the advice you give people to find the right job?
Oh my God.
What are some ways we can look for good jobs? You didn't even think that one through?
I think it's hard to put it into line, but I guess I will just say one sentence actually. Don't be afraid to switch jobs, especially early in your career.
Okay, let's stop, because part of learning is to reflect before we move on. So one more time, say that, John.
Don't be afraid to switch jobs, especially early in your career.
Okay.
I was also going to say, hop jobs. Don't be loyal to companies. In a sense, obviously, don't leave them in a bad place. But I've left jobs in 6 months. I've left them in 8 months. If you're doing it in a way that shows growth, hopefully with each step, it's really okay. I've not had to answer for it yet in any job interviews, but I will hopefully not have to ever. But yeah, don't feel like you have to be loyal to a company. If they're promising you something, maybe in like 2 to 5 years, don't believe them.
You know, I left San Francisco Public after 15 years and felt guilty from that.
No. Love them and leave them.
Advice on how to find a good job.
My question would be to ask yourself, what are you willing to be poor for? Because oftentimes we're always thinking about the outcome or achievement-based things, and even though I'm only 28, I can tell you that money and prestige are not enough to fuel what sucks your soul out. So, and typically I find if you are doing it because you're willing to struggle for something, you'll actually be the most successful in that arena. And I do feel that I'm a living byproduct of that. So to ask yourself, what am I willing to struggle for? What am I willing to be poor for? And hopefully that will guide you to more of what will actually make you quite successful and some money.
Take a pause.
I have to write that down.
That's perfect. Everybody write that down. We're writing it down.
It's so interesting. What are you willing to be poor for? Because I remember I have a very vivid recollection saying to myself and to other people, I just want to be a starving writer. I want just one bare light bulb and just eat beans out of the can, and that was like my dream life as long as I could write.
We are so similar, because mine was, I want to be a writer. I forgot the word starving. I had starving in the equation.
Well, I guess I aspired to starving.
One line, finding your dream job. What's your advice?
Listen to your gut instinct. That you have knowledge in your body and in your mind that may or may not be completely logical. Just listen to your gut instinct. If your hair is falling out and you're losing or gaining 20 pounds, that is not the right path for you. But if you forget to eat dinner doing something, that's your inner wisdom telling you you're on the right track.
I'm probably.
Let them breathe that for a second. Patrick.
I should be writing that one down. I'm probably not the best person to answer this question, seeing as I stayed in the same job for 38 years, which is like almost unheard of nowadays in journalism. But I took a swing at the job I really wanted early on. Interviewed in New York, and it was a swing and a miss. So I went back to the fallback position, which I can't complain. It was a good tour of duty. My advice would be, for what it's worth, is wear bifocals. You've got to look at what's immediately in front of you and make that work, but always keep the long view. Always be thinking about where you want to be in 5 or 10 years, and that may change. You have to be willing to, as the other panelists have spoken, you have to be able to reconsider that. But you've got to keep that twin view as you go through life.
What a great group of people and comments. You know, don't be afraid to change jobs. You know, be the kind person in the room, the one that people remember and want to be around. You know, what are you willing to starve for? Where will you grow without reward immediately? I mean, it's just, you're getting good advice. And I just say, follow your heart. You will never go wrong by doing something that you're enthusiastic about putting yourself into. The amount of time we spend at work and with work colleagues is huge in our lives. And if you're not enjoying that, you really should be doing something else with your life.
Lawrence?
Don't go to law school?
There are people in the front row crying now, Lawrence. That's not how this is meant to play out. All right, let's get ourselves to a wrap here. There we go. I'm going to volunteer you again. You've heard a lot from a lot of people today, and you know we're going to be here for you, so this is not the end of the conversation. We have a Slack channel for the mentor program, and anyone else who wants to be in there so that you can explore career opportunities, ask questions of the alums, let me know, and we'll get you into that thing. I'm going to go around very quickly, one line. What's one thing you will do differently as a result of having been here today? If anything.
Do I count? I have a career.
You heard a lot today. Is there anything that you'll do differently as a result of having been here?
I really like the advice of like just being kind to everyone, so I think I'll try that.
The elevator pitch was not something I heard of before.
Great.
I would try to be more passionate about things.
You work with the others. I want to be more passionate. Look at her face. She's lit up. This is what we have to draw out of ourselves. We have to find that passion, and if we're talking about passion, we got to be passionate, damn it. I was doing a presentation recently in front of a conference, and people were starting to get a little sleepy, and I jumped up on a chair. It's like, oh my God, what's he doing? About 99% of the people in the room loved it, and one person totally misunderstood, and I got trashed on the evaluation. It was good, I got trashed. It wasn't just people doing the show work. What's one thing you'll do differently?
I like the advice about like the bifocals, looking at what's immediate and then planning for the future. I'm gonna take that one.
Being more willing to adapt and try something new.
Yeah, don't be afraid to grow and go into a different occupation.
Looking for a plan B, C, and
Not worrying about being loyal to a specific company for something.
I like Amy's advice about just kind of going with the flow. Trusting my gut.
Think more critically about going to grad school.
Did you do anything differently? Did you learn anything today?
The elevator pitch, but also making it such that they ask more.
Reconsider applying to law school.
Can I tell her what we talked about yesterday? She doesn't know this yet, but I'm going to talk her out of law school. It worked. One meeting with her. That is the D-Band mentoring program in action.
I'd like to write more. Don't be afraid to take new risks and try new paths.
I was going to say the same thing. Try out more stuff here.
All right, then. You didn't think you were going to be included, did you? That's another thing. When you're in a room, this is reporters. Get people with you. Everybody got to be part of the group. Nobody gets left out.
Oh, wait for grad school. Look at more internships.
Be more adventurous.
Taking time off after undergrad to just
Feel jobs out.
trying everything that interests me, not just confining myself to one space.
thinking more critically about law school. Not putting pressure on myself to find like the perfect thing right away.
I think like perfecting the elevator.
Yeah, honestly, reconsidering law school too.
The back?
Elevator pitch and trying anything I'm remotely interested in.
I think focusing like on skills of like your exact career.
Elevator pitch. All right, elevator pitch is the winner today. Oral evaluation time here for this session. Was this what you expected?
No.
I'm seeing heads. Why was it different?
The chair part.
That was good. Anything else? Why was this different for you?
It was more interactive than I expected.
That's what we need to expect from our learning. That's what we need to expect from everything that we do with our peers. When we walk in a room, we have to think of everybody as co-conspirators, not as audience and presenters or facilitators and people that are sponges. That's the heart of the work you do, is reported in every other career we talk about, and we're here to support that. So thank you very much. I'll see you for the rest of the day.